Hello and welcome to the Doña Ana County Clerk's Office podcast, Preserving History and Democracy. My name is Caroline Zamora and I'm the Chief Deputy County Clerk. I'm so excited for today's episode. We are on the move today, field trip.
Yay.
We're having a good time. Jacob brought all the equipment with him. Thank you, Jacob. He is an unsung hero in our office. We don't get much done without Jacob. But today we have, to my left, we have our amazing producer, researcher extraordinaire, Bernardine Caporale.
Hi. Hi. So excited to be here.
We also have to my right, Cynthia Mendoza, our communications coordinator who makes this podcast happen. She just tells me where to show up, and I show up. That's how it works.
Put it on the schedule.
Yep, she puts it on my calendar, and we're good. But our special guest today, and I'm so excited that we're here talking to her because she is one of my favorite people. We're in her beautiful bookstore, and that is Denise Chavez. How are you, Denise?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Good morning, world.
Good
morning.
So excited to be here. So before we jump into it, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Cynthia so you can kind of tell us what we're doing here.
What we have going on. Like Caroline said, we have another incredible episode. As you can see, we're at a different location today. That is because we are at we have a very special guest with us, Denise Chavez, as Caroline mentioned, and we are at her bookstore, Casa Camino Real, in the heart of the Mesquite District. And I'm going to turn it over to Bern, who's going to tell us a little bit more about our special guest.
Okay, Mesquite Street was formerly the end of town on the east side, and some interesting people and historic figures lived on the street. We're very lucky to have writer, artist, activist, and much, much more, Denise Chavez, with us today. So sit back and enjoy your cafecito, and let's hear about La Vecindad. Help me out. Vecindad, the neighborhood. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, especially since this is my neighborhood. My grandfather built a house on Mesquite Street, which is now the Mesquite Art Gallery, and I have a picture on my altar, which is the piano. Who has a piano altar? Well, I do, and it's in the next room. My grandfather, Epifanio Chavez Sr., and his wife, Guadalupe Trevis Chavez, built a home. My father grew up over there, 4 to a bed. And my uncle Eddie Chavez, who did the artwork at La Posta, he did that mural in the lobby and all the beautiful artwork. It's the 85th anniversary of La Posta, and I posted on Facebook some of my uncle's artwork.
Yeah.
But my uncle grew up there. He later had a restaurant, El Jacal, that was just right behind their house. It's beautiful to know that it's an art gallery, and I need to talk to Mel Stone because it would make a wonderful Museo de la Gente. Maybe Mel will help me someday purchase that building, get the building. You don't know about that, Mel, but it's a very historic, beautiful place. It's also catty corner in this Mesquite area to the Sunshine Grocery Store, which was my dad's cousin, Bestina Sanchez. She was a single woman, had this wonderful grocery store with her popsicles and her sodas. I asked her once, Bestina, did you ever feel like getting married? She says, ay, no, ni lo mande Dios, no, por favor, no. She says, one time I went out and the man touched my hand. That was it. And so she had her beautiful grocery store over there. It's a wonderful historical neighborhood. The Casa Camino Real is named for the Camino Real, the royal road to the north, the trade route coming from Mexico City to Okeowenge, San Juan Pueblo, 1,600-mile trade route going north. So sometimes as I sit here, I look out the window and I imagine that I hear the carretas, the carts. I don't know how they traveled, but they traveled with the Bible and Don Quixote. And I write in an article that I wrote in an article for New Mexico Magazine. Those were the selected books. The Bible and Don Quixote. Because Don Quixote encompassed everything, every kind of person, every situation. My mother loved that book. And now that I was talking to Caroline about it's the 50th anniversary of Bless Me Ultima, I would say that Bless Me Ultima has that magnitude of Don Quixote. All people, all situation, all types of characters, all ages, set after World War II. And as I write in my introduction for this book, we're in a time of war. This is a time of blood stories. And Rodolfo Anaya, and I wrote in my foreword, there is a character who's a jangled World War II veteran, and they say about him, he did not know what he was doing. And I would say that about our world right now. The war sickness was on him, and he did not know what he was doing. And so we're in a time of war sickness. And I would say that Bless Mi Ultima, I won't say it's Our Quixote, but it is of that magnitude. So here's to Rodolfo Anaya, to the neighborhood.
Yes, to Rodolfo and the neighborhood. Love it. So I love that we're here today, just celebrating you, talking to you. We have our café de olla. We have some pan dulce. I have my marranito here because I love marranitos. I have a special connection to this neighborhood because my beautiful grandmother, when she came here, she was from Gomez Palacios, Durango. And my grandfather was from Escalon. Now, he was an abusive alcoholic, eventually left the family, left my grandma with 6 children to raise on their own. Good, I agree. And they, my grandma was such a hard worker, and so they grew up here in the Mesquite district on East Picacho, right across from the Brannigan Library, across from the police department, fire department, right there. We used to call it the greenhouse because it was a bright greenhouse. Mm-hmm. If you've ever been to Mexico, you know that the houses are beautiful. They're so vibrant colors. Yeah. They're just gorgeous. And so that's what Mesquite, that's what the hood used to look like, growing up. And the houses were all these beautiful colors. Purple. And so my grandma's house, we called it the greenhouse. And so where my mom grew up, eventually all the kids end up having newspaper routes, and my grandma at one point had the largest newspaper route in all of Las Cruces, and so all the kids had newspaper routes. And my grandma died when I was 13, but I still remember, like, I could probably still roll a newspaper like no one's business. Like it's like wow. It's like built into my muscles that I can do it, because we would help my grandma, especially on Sundays, because if you remember the newspapers on Sundays, there were so many ads, and my grandma would be out there chucking newspapers. I saw her kill a snake with a newspaper once. Like my grandma can do anything with a newspaper, I'm telling you. Yeah. And so this is and now I live very close. I'm not exactly in the Mesquite district, but I live in the Alameda district now. And so I'm pretty close still. And I've said this in some of my Facebook posts, because I've purchased some lobby cards, Mexican lobby cards from Denise, and they're beautiful lobby cards. And lobby cards they were basically movie posters from the beautiful film era, the golden cinema era of
golden age of
Mexican movies, yes. Mexican cinema. And so I have several, and I need to buy more, but there's some up in my office at the county, because I believe that the county should be putting in more artwork from Doña Ana County, and so purchasing them from Denise is really special to me. But we're here to really talk about a few things. One of them is this amazing article that you wrote, Denise, in Edible New Mexico, and it talks about the Mesquite Street. And so do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about this article and what inspired you, and what inspires you about the Mesquite our area?
Well, first of all, my grandfather built a house there on Mesquite Street that's now an art gallery. Eventually, I just had a birthday. I'm 76 right now.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Feliz cumpleaños.
Yes. And I feel very good. I'm blessed to be this age. I never thought I would reach this age, which is wonderful. I'm in relatively good health. I think it's important to remember your antepasados. I've been to Gomez Palacio. It's a beautiful part of Mexico. I love that part of Mexico. It's gorgeous. So in honor of your grandmother and my grandparents, I think it's important to remember who we are, where we come from, what matters to us. I taught at NMSU for 7 years. I taught University of Houston. I've taught courses at College of Santa Fe, and I started my first teaching career in Espanol at the Northern New Mexico Community College. I was the drama department. There was no one else. But I think it's important to remember who you are and where you come from. So this is my neighborhood. This is where my grandmother lived, my grandfather. I have pictures. But the article was generated by this wonderful Foodways magazine. And Edible New Mexico is part of the Edible magazine system, Edible Ojai, California, Edible whatever. But the editors are fabulous. They contacted me first to write an article about Chile. And I wrote about Chile in southern New Mexico because it's very different than northern New Mexico.
Yes.
And I remembered the Nakayama family, the Japanese farmers, because we used to buy food, well, groceries, not groceries, but verduras and vegetables from the Nakayama family. And I still see that place off of Amador Street where they sold their things. My mother knew Fabian Garcia, the father of Green Chile. He was a great person who died alone, really. She used to visit him at Memorial General Hospital, which is now another but it was just right down the block from where we live, very close by. And she was one of the few people that was with him at the end.
Wow.
And so my mother was a very dear friend of Fabian, and the baton was passed to the Nakayamas, Roy Nakayama, who is another father of Green Chile. So the article generated from what makes us Chile people. And people think it's Hatch Chile, like that's the name of the Chile. No, there's so many different varieties. I wanted to clarify that in the article. And then I wrote an article about a wonderful restaurant in El Paso, El Emi, which was a nominee for the James Beard Food Award. It was fabulous. Mm-hmm. It was a restaurant like you see in Mexico City or Oaxaca. And so I've been writing for them. I've written about bizcochos. Bizcochito in northern New Mexico, our traditional cookie. And I asked on Facebook, it was a poll, 200 and some people took the poll. It was a bizcocho poll that I printed out, and if you wanted it, you had to ask me for it, but I had questions. And so the major question in New Mexico is, of course, not red or green, but lard or no lard. And so that lard thing raged in really for 2 months on Facebook. I had so many respondents. It was fabulous. And so all of these articles combined, and it became a polyvocal article, lots of photographs. I've met tons of people and become friends, and people have come in. You never know when you're going to reach out and learn something. So this article was really fabulous to work on. And then the Mesquite article, Neighborhoods of New Mexico. And I'm very glad to celebrate Mesquite, not only the Sunshine Grocery, the Mesquite Art Gallery, Nopalitos. That's a wonderful restaurant, really, over there.
My favorite restaurant in town.
It's my favorite in town, too. My husband says the best green enchiladas in Las Cruces.
Best green salsa.
Yes.
The best green salsa and the best waitress.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Paulette.
Paulette Herrera was my mother's student at Carl Conley Elementary, and she was in 3rd grade. My mother taught for 42 years, and she always said she had the varicose veins to prove it at Conley. And those of us that grew up in Las Cruces remember Conley. There was no grass. It was like an open field of dirt. And my mother, with her bad legs, was out there. But Paulette was my mother's student, and when I later met her at Nopalito, she knew that I was my mother's daughter. But her mother had just died. She was in 3rd grade, and my mother took her under her wing. And this last year in the article, I write about Paulette because it's a food magazine, Foodways. I was given a $50 certificate. I don't know how these people tracked me down, but they did. But somebody sent me a $50 certificate to give to a barista or a waitress for service in the world, a nonprofit organization. So immediately I went over there and gave it to Paulette. Here's a $50 Visa thing. Use it I said, don't spend it on your grandchildren. No. I give her a lot of books for her grandchildren are good readers. But Paulette got that certificate, and as I said in the article, when I see her, I see my mother standing next to her.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's what's so beautiful about Las Cruces is it's such a small community still. It's growing, there's a lot of more people here, but I still feel like it's a small community, and I feel like that's what's so beautiful about Mesquite Street is it's very much so a small community still.
Yes, it is.
I
Mesquite.
agree, and I feel like so many people knew my mom, and I'll go like, "You're Rosie's daughter." I am Rosie's daughter.
Who are you?
Or we go around town and like anywhere we go, my mom like runs into someone. Oh, I went to school with this person. I grew up with this person. They grew up across the street, or and so there's still a lot of that connection.
Yeah.
Oh,
Even
yes.
though it's still growing, and we still have lots of people who love this area and are moving here, which I think I'm happy to share Las Cruces with them, but it still feels small.
Yeah,
It is.
absolutely.
Yes, students of my mother would come up to me all the time and still do. And somebody even said to me, "Well, you always look nice." And she said to me, "But not as nice as your mother." And I took that as a great compliment because Father John Tickle, may he rest in peace.
Father
He
Tickle.
was a wonderful man, dear friend, and he called my mother La Reina de las Cruces, the Queen of Las
that's
Cruces.
sweet.
And so I have been working on a biography, La Reina de las Cruces. Father Tickle hired me to do some theater at the Basilica, Immaculate Heart. I am the only one that has probably performed and jumped around the altar. It was for the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I did a performance piece, one woman show called Guadalupe times 3. It was about climbing Tortugas Mountain for the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I had 3 different characters, and he hired me to do that. And also he and I he was a wonderful theatrical person, actor. As you know, he was a great actor, a great comedian. I did a play with him called Francis. I was about St. Francis, and I played St. Clair, but he took me aside, Denise, he said, "You need to become a little more staged. She wasn't as passionate as you're playing her. She's a little more subdued." So I played St. Clair a little too much, but I also did a little performance called La Morenita. It's a one-woman show about Our Lady of Guadalupe. And when the Basilica was inaugurated, my mother hired me to do these theatrical pieces, and she died of cancer before the inaugural event. But I performed then. But I have jumped. I think I'm the only one that has jumped around on that altar. And also in San Albinos, I did my one-woman show. So I have performed and jumped on those 2 altars. And also as a clown, when I was living in Santa Fe, Dodo, was my character, Dodo the clown. I'll have to send you the picture. Dodo, we took over the roundhouse, and I, as a character, we were running all over the office. I have laid on the floor of the rotunda in my character as Dodo. How many of you have laid on the rotunda floor of our state capitol? Well, I can say that I've done that.
I love
Denise, I just want to go back. What was your grandfather's name?
Epifanio Chavez Sr.
Well, I found the deed to his house.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it was in our vault. And
oh, my goodness. For the book? Epifanio Chavez.
And Guadalupe Chavez?
Guadalupe Trevis Chavez. My grandfather was always taking up for them their heels. He was he worked at Shalem Colony. He was a carpenter at Shalem. And for those of us who have read the history of Shalem Colony, my grandfather worked out there. As a matter of fact, my father was born out there.
Okay.
But that is fantastic. I am so happy. Epifanio Chavez, he died young. He had throat cancer. But I remember my grandfather bringing bags of popsicles to us from the sunshine. Mm-hmm. So here, thank you. I have
That's
a
for
chill.
you.
This is Epifanio Chavez presente, as we say in Spanish, present.
Thank you.
Siempre presente. Thank you for that. That's wonderful.
What else did you find, Bern?
Okay, something else I found. Tell us about Hibbler, the Hibblers.
Well, I don't know too much about the African American brothers that started the Jitney Cafe. Sylvia Camuñez and Irene have a lot of information. They need to be interviewed too. And I think that the descendants of Lula Grimes' family need to be interviewed as well, because it was an interconnection of community. In this East...
So I know real quick, sorry, Denise,
Yes.
before you get too far into it.
Yes.
This building that we're in here, your
Yes.
beautiful bookstore,
Yes.
belonged to the Grimes, as you said.
Yes.
We have done an episode on Black Dumb.
Yes.
And so we know that the Buffalo Soldiers were here in the area. They founded Black Dumb.
Yes.
After Black Dumb, they came here to the Mesquite district. They also founded Vado.
Yes.
We have a beautiful African-American church, historic church, the Clarabelle Williams family. We've done an episode.
Yes.
We've talked about the Clarabelle Williams family. And so just wanted to give our listeners a little bit of background. Go ahead.
Well, Lula Grimes lived here in this particular house, but I have gone back and found papers from the Espalin family. The Doñana County Bend land grant was this land grant. And I know that the neighborhood amigos are having a ceremony on Dia de Muertos at Klein Park. They're contacting all the 50 descendants of the land grant people, and Faith Hudson and her husband John are going to be doing an event in which we're calling out the names of the descendants. The descendants will be there. He's kind of platting out the thing, and we'll call their names out and we'll say presente. So we're honoring the ancestors for Day of the Dead. Well, the Grimes family lived here later, but Francisco Espalin and his widowed mother, whose name eludes me right now, I did see it online, lived or had this particular property. Then it went to a John Baumgartner, either a T or a D. It was spelled both ways, from NMSU. But when the Grimes moved here in the late 1800s, I believe, Lula was left a widow. Her husband, Alonso, was kicked in the head by a horse. I know that. But I have her photograph. I met the descendants. I know that in this building, her room was in the back. My sister Fadi, this room that she painted before she passed, Fadi's room. And 3 of the children were born in this front room, the Bilderbeck Latin American room. It was a beautiful event. The name of the town was New Mexico, Missouri. But they shortened it to Mexico, Missouri. And that's when the Grimes came here. When I was growing up in this area, this is the poor side of town. My uncle lived on this side of town, and I would say that our family, some of the members of our family denigrated him because they moved west. They didn't want to stay east. This is the poor side. This is where the poor Mexicanos lived, the African Americans lived, and if you would drive through this area, it was like a shanty town in certain areas. And it was like the deep south. It was like the interior of Mexico, adobe. Sylvia Camuñez has said that the Mesquite area is one of the designated areas that has the most existing adobe buildings in the United States. She's a resource too. Most of the buildings, and hopefully our city will not destroy some of those buildings. We need to keep those Las Cruces. We need to keep those buildings alive. Las Cruces has a terrible history about preserving buildings. St. Genevieve's Church, the Country Club Trust building. What happened there? That was a great oversight, and I blame a lot of people. I'm not going to call them out now, but the thing is, we don't have a sense of cultural history. So I have been trying to gather information. Our Museo de la Gente will become an archival resource community center that has my archives, my husband's archives, who's Ukrainian French photographer. These are his photos of Mali, South Africa. And so we will have that first edition of Rodolfo Anaya, that signed poster of Cesar Chavez when he was here in Las Cruces in 1993, and he died 2 weeks later. Bishop Ramirez invited him. So my manda, which you can
like
really say, The mandate, it's like a pilgrimage to Our Lady of Guadalupe. My manda is to preserve the history and culture and story of this community. I remember one of my playwriting colleagues at UNM, one of my friends, he says, "Are you always going to write about New Mexico?" And I said, "Yeah." "Are you always going to write about La Frontera, the borderland region?" Yes. I didn't need to go to New York to become an actor. And I was in theater. I was a playwright, a director, an actress. I don't need to go anywhere. My stories are here. So I'm here. I'm still here. I'll be here as long as I can be. And Mesquite will be here too. It will never become a Mesilla. We don't want it to become a Mesilla. I love Mesilla, but there's too many families, too much living presence here that we're not going to become that commercialized. We don't need to see signs that say, and I saw it for the first time that year, Cinco de Drinko, Cinco de Mayo. I find that offensive.
Yeah.
We're not Cinco de Drinko. We are a community, vecindad, a neighborhood. Punto final.
Yes, agree.
Well, I found
What
Oh
did you
my
find
goodness.
a quick claim from 1962 from Lulu Grimes, a surviving wife of Alonzo Grimes,
Oh my.
also known as Lon Grimes, deceased, and so on. It goes, but Lulu's signature is on this.
Oh,
Lulu's signature
how
is on it.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And you know, I will share, it gives me a
beautiful.
chill, presente. I will share with the Grimes family too, and I keep in touch with them. They're beautiful people.
Yeah, there's some pictures on here as well.
What was like the UN when we had this reunion over here? The best enchiladas, the matriarch, the red enchiladas. There were people all over. The photographs are beautiful. I'll send you some
Yeah.
of the children. They're beautiful. And it was very healing for me because my sister had just died. And we were all in this room. The minister from Vado was over there where Jacob is. And we put our hands on everybody's shoulder, right shoulder, and it was like a lineup of people praying together. It was just fantastic.
Oh,
very
beautiful.
healing. It was beautiful.
I love
Do you remember who owned the Sunshine Grocery?
Carlos Sanchez or
Well,
Vestina.
Sir Carlos Sanchez.
Yes.
I found an article about him. He went on to become a representative.
Yes.
So this was in the newspaper.
Oh, even got his
Oh,
picture.
how wonderful.
Okay,
Well,
let's just
Carlos
say-
Sanchez, Vestina Sanchez, it passed on to Vestina later. But the Sanchez, they have a beautiful homestead over there. Their house is still there. And across from their house, they have like their own private little park. They've done a wonderful landscaping over there.
My mom told me they had so many kids they needed their own park.
Well, they have their own park, and my dream has always been to do a reading there. We need to have a celebration. I went to school with Yolanda Sanchez and Alex, her brother, and they were kin. They were kin. They were family. Yolanda was gorgeous, and so these are all familiar people.
So
Carlos
a friend of mine,
Sanchez.
Erica, she's married
you.
into the Sanchez family, and she was saying that they still have their family get-togethers there at the park.
Really?
But if you ever drive, it looks like a park, but it's like their family park.
Yes,
How
it's a
cool.
family park. It's beautiful. And right around the corner, as my dad used to tell me when he was a boy, was the long dobe. Have you ever heard of the long dobe? It was a long adobe with a lot of different rooms, and it was the house of prostitution for Las
boy.
Cruces. And all the politicos and all the people that shouldn't have been there were
Yeah.
there.
Were always there.
So it was the long dobe. It's right around the corner from the Sanchez down a little ways. So he always liked to talk a lot about the long dobe. My father had Alzheimer's, and I would drive him around the La Vecindad here. And his landmarks were Sunshine Grocery Store, his family home, the Long Dobe, and Papin's Last Direction, which was the bank. Mr. Papin's a bank. And Mr. Papin himself, Frank Papin, referred to it as his last direction. I'm not making this up, folks, but it was funny because I wrote in one of my books, and I changed the name to Higginbottom's Last Direction, and Mr. Papin came up to me. He says, Denise, I like that. I like that you put in the last direction. And I thought, people in the know in Las Cruces. So my dad, I take him out for yogurt. He'd get tired, and we'd take the corner, and he would say, there it is, Papin's Last Erection. He would remember and saw that building. But the Sunshine Grocery was pivotal. You can edit these as you need to. You may need to edit a few things. The Sunshine, I used to visit Vestina, and when I ran the Border Book Festival, the longest book fair in New Mexico for 20 years, our very first year we gave her the Sunshine Community Service Award.
Yeah.
And she was at the Rio Grande with a corsage. She had her hair done. And it was just beautiful to see. I've kept in touch with Harry Sanchez, who's now in Latin America doing his thing. But Harry assures me that he's coming back to reopen the Sunshine. Hopefully.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That'll be special.
Yes.
Yeah.
What else did you find, Bern?
Okay, so you spoke before, Denise, about how eclectic this community was. You had the African Americans, you had the colorful painted houses from Mexico. I found an article about the first African American mayor in New Mexico, Johnson Mayor. Is that his name?
Albert
Johnson, sorry. And so I found that a picture of him being sworn in, and I think he was in this community as well.
Yes, he was. Imagine, and it was later down the road that he would have been, shame on us, the first African American mayor in the state.
Right.
And that is his statue there in front of City Hall.
That's right, in front of City Hall.
And that's where everybody gathers for the marches. Let's march for Gaza. Palestine will be free. We know that. And that's where everybody gathers right there by Mr. Johnson. And I think his statue, it's a beautiful, I've had prayer gatherings with curanderas there. All kinds of beautiful things have happened. When we moved here, in 2012, our rent was doubled in Mesilla, and it was a good location. This building was owned by Mr. Sosa, Daniel Sosa II, and now we're into 2, 3, 4, 5. But Mr. Sosa was a Supreme Court justice, the longest-running Supreme Court justice, and his wife Rita. They left this open adobe here, but they owned this building, and they offered me this place because our rent was doubled, and we moved here. And it was a wonderful move to move here. It was challenging, but it was right. And it was right for me to come back to my community, to work in the community, and realize that our resources, our work was here with community. So it's been a great blessing to be here. It was wild. All of these trees were not here. It was like the lot next door. I would like to purchase this building and turn this into the Museo de la Gente. We need to add on. If a patron is out there and wants to help me, come call me. Call me. Let's do it. Because this is a beautiful adobe, and we need to really preserve it. I had to replace one of the beams. When I moved here, somebody gave me a grant, and one of the beams on the floor was weak. We had to replace it, and from Stout Company, they came over. The gentleman came over. He says, "Oh my God, I cannot believe how beautiful this floor is." He had followed somebody with wood that they were going to throw at the dump. This wood, these beams are thicker than the ones next door. The others are thin. This is the oldest room that we're in here right now, and this gentleman that was fixing that one beam, replacing that old beam, he says, "Oh, these repairs in the corner, they're 100 years old."
Oh, wow.
And so you see the thin beams and the thicker beams. I remember Mayor Johnson and also Mayor Klein, too. Klein Park.
Klein Park.
And so this is historic. And the beautiful thing about our community was there was a mestizaje, a mixture of cultures. Our Mexicanos spoke Spanish, our African Americans spoke Spanish. Everybody was on the same page. There was a community connection. We were familia. We were all family, and it's a beautiful thing. Really, it was.
Yeah.
You know, my mom always talked about her friends, the Washington family, and and they would all jump on their bikes and they'd go down to the Sunshine, and they'd ride their bikes to where Citizens Bank is now. That used to be like the mall.
Okay.
And so they'd go to the mall and they would,
That plaza
yeah,
there.
all the the Mexican kids hung out with the black kids, and
That's
it
right.
was a mixed neighborhood.
It was. When my dad was growing up, Mesquite was the end of Las Cruces, and he used to say that he would walk through fields of rabbits to get to NMSU. Sometimes he hitched a ride with Mr. Fountain, who was the only person that had this old jalopy, and sometimes Albert Fountain would come around and take my father. But it was interesting because those were incredible years. When he was growing up, there were mostly Mexicanos, Mexican American, and there was one Anglo man that everybody referred to as El Güero Solo. He was the only Anglo, and in my mind, this character that should be a title of a book, El Güero Solo, the lone Anglo. So all these Mexicanos, African Americans, and one man that chose to live in this poor side of town, and it was poor. If you lived at Pioneer Park, you'd come up in the world. But El Güero Solo deserves his own book. Who was he? If I don't know who he was, my father was born in 1910. Who would have been that man that chose to live over here in this side of town? I have no idea. So I'm going to have
Look
to
into it,
create a
yeah.
character, El Güero Solo.
That sounds like a story I'd read.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So I've got a deed from Clarabelle Williams, of course.
Oh, okay.
How wonderful.
From the
Yeah.
Clarabelle Williams one. Let's see.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
saved the best for last, so we're
Yes,
approaching the best.
Clarabelle
But
Williams.
Clarabelle,
And this is a deed to her house, I'm assuming.
yes.
So here in the Mesquite, if you know the hood, you know that the Clarabelle William house
Yes.
is the one that has like
All the animals?
all the sculptured animals
Yes.
in front. I want to say there's like the buffalo is in front.
Yeah, they got all these like statues and stuff.
Yes,
right?
I'm trying to
Okay.
think what other
That's right.
animals in there. I want to say
Yeah.
there's a bear, but I'm not
Yes,
sure.
there are.
Yeah, and so that's the Clarabelle Williams.
They
house.
always decorate it really cool for Christmas.
They
too. They always
do,
got all
yeah.
these lights and,
And
stuff.
my mother, of course, knew all these people
Oh.
because she was here. She moved here in about 46. And I write about my mother in my book, A Taco Testimony. She was a widow. Her first husband had been accidentally poisoned, and obviously you have not read my book, A Taco
I
Testimony.
have not read that one.
Meditations on family, food, and culture. So my mother was una mexicana tradicional, vestida de luto, dressed in black. She wore black for 9 years till she
Wow.
moved here and met my father, who had just returned from Georgetown. Senator Chavez, Denise Chavez, was my padrino. He baptized me at Hot Springs, Tierce, New Mexico, and my mother contacted him because Senator Chavez helped my father to get to Georgetown. My father went to night school as a lawyer, and Senator Chavez became my padrino. I'm named after him. And so it's a wonderful legacy. I do remember Senator Chavez very well. I was little, but when on his travels, he used to give me charms from all over the world.
Wow.
And I have a little charm bracelet from the Eiffel Tower and, whatever. And so it's a wonderful historical area. There is a book by one of Senator Chavez's granddaughters, but I would like to write about him as well, too. Senator Denise Chavez, the first Hispano senator in the Senate. He was there for many years, and he was my padrino. He blessed me. Except, here's the story. When I was baptized in Hot Springs, he couldn't come to Las Cruces. He was going to be over there.
Right.
And the priest said, "Senator, what is the child's name?" Meaning me. And without a beat, he says, "Dionisia." And so my certificate says Dionisia and not Denise. Okay, so I'm Dionisia. Very few people call me Dionisia, but my real name is Denise Elia Chavez. But Senator, I'm very honored to be the godchild of the senator.